There have been some great pass-catching backs over the years, obviously CMC, Alvin Kamara, and recently Bijan Robinson, and they all would say that they implement parts of LT's game in their own. In a time where a more physical and grounded running style was the norm, LT completely changed the game, showing NFL players, owners, GMs, and fans everywhere that your number one rushing option and your number one receiving option can be the same player. You all know how good Christian McCaffrey is. How good was LaDainian Tomlinson? That's what we're here to discuss. In this video, we'll be going over the OG Christian McCaffrey and his NFL career. After Tomlinson finished up his illustrious high school career at University High School, yes, that's their real name, in Waco, Texas, where he was both a running back and a linebacker, he committed to play football at Texas Christian University. In 1997, TCU was a college football program that was completely laughable, much different than the Horned Frogs of today, so the roster wasn't loaded with talent, meaning that Tomlinson would make the roster as a true freshman. He would even get a good amount of touches. As a true freshman, Tomlinson would split carries with running back Basil Mitchell, continuing through his sophomore season. Now, here's the plot twist. LT was barely a receiving threat during this time. He did have 109 receiving yards his freshman year, but that was only on 11 catches and no touchdowns. That would be by far his best receiving season as a collegiate athlete. As a sophomore, Tomlinson would only catch 6 passes for 34 yards. Who would have thought that this guy would become one of the greatest pass-catching threats out of the backfield in NFL history? After his sophomore season, Tomlinson would take sole possession of the TCU backfield, and boy oh boy, what a year for the kid. Once taking over the starting running back role, LaDainian Tomlinson took the NCAA world by storm, rushing for an insane 1,850 yards and 18 touchdowns, leading his TCU Horned Frogs to an improved 7-4 record. He even set an NCAA record at the time on November 20th when he rushed a whopping 43 times for 406 yards and 6 touchdowns against UTEP. The guy had shown out and proven his ability to be one of the best pure runners in the country. TCU would win their first bowl game with Tomlinson this season, defeating the East Carolina Pirates 28-14 in the 1999 Mobile, Alabama Bowl. Tomlinson would be named the Western Athletic Conference Offensive Player of the Year and earn first-team All-WAC for his junior season efforts. Tomlinson would decide to forego the 2000 NFL Draft and return to TCU for his senior season, which paid dividends. In his senior season as a Horned Frog, LT rushed for 2,518 yards and 22 touchdowns in 11 games. This guy was ridiculous. This season was the absolute definition of consistency, as Tomlinson would rush for 100-plus yards and a touchdown every single game of the season. TCU would go on an impressive 10-1 in 2000 on the back of LaDainian Tomlinson, who led the NCAA in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, earning himself the title of the best running back in the nation after winning the Jim Brown Award. LT was also voted as a unanimous All-American and was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy, an award which would ultimately be won by Florida State Seminoles quarterback Chris Weinke. LT declared for the 2001 NFL Draft shortly following his senior season. Tomlinson's 5,263 rushing yards were 6th all-time in NCAA Division I history at the time and set TCU records for single game, season, and career rushing yards and touchdowns. Simply put, LaDainian Tomlinson was one of the greatest college running backs ever. In 2001, LaDainian Tomlinson was a lock to be a top 10 pick in the NFL Draft, and that is exactly what happened. With the 5th overall pick, the San Diego Chargers selected LaDainian after trading down from the 1st overall pick. The Chargers had been in need of a quarterback, but instead of staying at number 1 and taking Michael Vick, they would trade down and select their franchise running back instead. LT was also very nearly a Cleveland Brown. The Browns held the 3rd overall pick and desperately needed a running back like Tomlinson, but they chose defensive tackle Gerard Warren instead. Can you imagine how LT's career would have ended up if he had been drafted by Cleveland? LT would start off his NFL career hot, rushing for 1,236 yards and 10 touchdowns, but more impressively, he showed off his receiving ability. catching 59 passes for 367 yards, finishing as the runner-up for the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. Now, if you think rookie year LT was a beast, wait until you hear about sophomore year LT. LaDainian Tomlinson in 2002 rushed for a whopping 1,683 yards and 14 touchdowns in 2002, while also catching 79 passes for 489 yards and a touchdown. 79 passes. And guess how many he caught the following year? 100! LaDainian Tomlinson had broken out 3 years into his NFL career and was legitimately one of the most dangerous pass-catching threats in all of football after rarely being used in the passing game at TCU. Oh, and he was also rushing for 1,600-plus yards and 13-plus touchdowns per season. He made All-Pro second team in both seasons, and he was just getting started. In 2004, LaDainian Tomlinson would be named to his first-team All-Pro after rushing for 17 touchdowns. At this point, LT was the best running back in football, and it wasn't even close. He dominated high school, he dominated college, and now he was dominating the NFL. How could you possibly stop this guy? Spoiler alert, you couldn't. LT would continue his sustained dominance in 2005, rushing for 1,462 yards and 18 touchdowns. The guy was a scoring machine, and in 2006, he would have statistically the greatest season a running back has ever had, as he rushed for 1,815 yards and 28 touchdowns, an NFL record that still stands today. He also caught 56 passes for 506 yards and 3 touchdowns, earning NFL MVP, which rarely goes to a non-quarterback, and Offensive Player of the Year. What a season! At this point in his career, Tomlinson had only missed 1 game in his NFL career. He was insanely healthy, insanely consistent, and insanely productive. He was building one of the greatest running back careers in NFL history. And, of course, this would continue in 2007 as he would once again make first-team All-Pro, leading the league in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns yet again with 1,474 yards and 15 touchdowns. Are you guys seeing the Christian McCaffrey comparisons yet? Unfortunately, 2008 would start to see a decline for the former MVP as he would, quote-unquote, only rush for 1,110 yards and 10 touchdowns. Can you believe that that's a decline in the NFL? However, 2009 would see career lows in rushing attempts, yards, touchdowns, receptions, and receiving yards. This would also happen to be Tomlinson's final season as a Charger, as his contract would run out after the season. The Chargers and NFL legend would then sign with the New York Jets to finish off his career, where he started a combined 14 games over 2 years and, funnily enough, still almost rushed for 1,000 yards in 2010 with 914. Even at his worst, LaDainian Tomlinson was still an above-average NFL running back. This guy was amazing. He was an unmatched rusher, an unmatched touchdown scorer, and an unmatched pass catcher out of the backfield. That sound like anybody else you know? The former Carolina Panther and current San Francisco 49er won the Offensive Player of the Year in 2023 after rushing for a league-leading 1,459 yards, 14 touchdowns, and catching 67 passes for 564 yards and 7 touchdowns. Doesn't this just sound like the average LaDainian Tomlinson season? One thing CMC could accomplish over LT is winning a Super Bowl. Do you think McCaffrey and the Niners will be able to win it all? That's it. Did you all know LaDainian Tomlinson was this good? In your opinion, who's better, LT or CMC? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching The Halftime Show.